5, regular meeting of the San Francisco Ethics Commission. Today's meeting is live cablecast on SF.gov TV and live streamed online at sfgov.org.
This webinar is being transcribed and summarized.
sfgovtv.org/ethicslive. For public comment, members of the public may attend in person or may participate by phone or on the WebEx platform, as explained in our agenda document. Mr. Clerk, can you please explain how public comment will be handled today?
Certainly. Public comment will be available on each item on this agenda. Each member of the public will be allowed 3 minutes to speak. For those attending in person, opportunities to speak during the public comment period will be made available here in room 400 at City Hall. For those attending remotely, the public comment period can also be provided by phone call by calling 1-415-655-0001 with access code 2661-868-6602, followed by the pound sign, and then pound again to join as an attendee. When your item of interest comes up, please press *3 to raise your hand to be added to the public comment line. Public comment is also available via the WebEx client application. Use the WebEx link on the agenda to connect and press Raise Hand button to be added to the public comment line. For detailed instructions about how to interact with the telephone system or WebEx client, please refer to the public comment section of the agenda document for this meeting. Public comment may also be submitted in writing and will be shared with the Commission after this meeting has concluded and will be included as part of the official meeting file. Written comments should be sent to ethics.commission@sfgov.org. Members of the public who attend Commission meetings, including remote attendance, are expected to behave responsibly and respectfully. During public comment, please address your comments to the Commission as a whole and not an individual member. People who engage in name-calling, shouting, interruptions, foul language, or other distracting behavior may be excluded from participation.
Thank you. I now call the meeting to order. Clerk, will you please call the roll under item number 1?
Certainly. Commissioner Ye?
Present.
Commissioner Tsai?
Present.
And Acting Chair Salahi?
Present.
And Acting Chair Salahi, with 3 members present, you have a quorum.
Thank you. With that, I call agenda item 2, general public comment. Are there any people in the room who'd like to make general public comment? Seeing none, are there any on the telephone line?
Checking the queue to see if we have any callers. One moment. And Vice Chair Salahi, there are no callers in the queue.
Thank you. Hearing no further of the members of the public wishing to speak, general public comment under item 2 is now closed. I now call the consent calendar. As noted in the agenda, there will be no separate discussions on the consent calendar item unless a request is made by a commission member or a member of the public in attendance, in which event the matter shall be removed from the consent calendar and considered as a separate item. If any commissioner asks to discuss an item, that item will be taken up following action on the consent calendar items on the regular calendar for discussion and action. Does any commission member wish to discuss any item on the consent calendar? I had one correction to the minutes that I wanted to flag, so I'll pull that one off the consent calendar. But how about the remainder of the items?
I was wondering if Director Ford could just provide us an update on anything with regard to the Streamlining Commission.
Okay. Then we'll pull out the Executive Director's report from the consent calendar as well. All right. So that leaves item number 5 on the consent calendar. We will call first public comment on item number 3, the draft minutes of the Ethics Commission, October 10th, 2025 regular meeting.
Chair, would you like to ask for public comment on whether the public would like to move any additional items off the consent calendar?
Yes, we'll do that first. Are there any members of the public who would wish to make public comment on the consent calendar items? Item number 8. We'll be taking that up later in this meeting. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Seeing no members of the public in the room wishing to make comment on the consent calendar, are there any in the queue?
Vice Chair Salahi checking the queue to see if there's any callers. And there are no callers for the consent calendar.
Okay. Do we need to take a vote on the consent calendar item, remaining one?
You do
There's no
not, because
action?
it's
Okay.
all
There's
that's
no
left is
action.
item 5, which is informational only.
So moving on to item number 3, which is the draft minutes of the Ethics Commission October 10th, 2025 regular meeting. Are there any members of the public who'd wish to make public comment on that? Seeing none in the room, are there any in the queue?
Checking the queue. One moment. And there are no callers.
The reason I pulled this one is just a very minor point. I was absent at that meeting, but I think it identifies me as being present, so I just wanted to double check the attendees before we approve that.
Me as well. I believe I was not present.
Right. Well,
I'll be sure to correct that
thank you. Yeah.
and resubmit.
Make a motion to approve the minutes with those modifications.
Second.
Can we take roll, please?
Certainly. Commissioner Ye,
Aye.
Commissioner Sai,
Aye.
and Vice Chair Salahi.
Aye.
With 3 votes in the affirmative, the motion passes.
Thank you. I now call item number 4, the Executive Director's Report.
Thank you, Chair Salahi. For the record, Executive Director Pat Ford. I can give a quick update on what's going on with the Streamlining Task Force. I'll try not to rehash what was in here. I'll try and add a bit. So as I talked about, we had a hearing on Wednesday of last week when the task force took up the governance-related commissions, and they were looking at the recommendations that the staff had made in their report, which I think I provided here. And the 2 relevant recommendations for the Ethics Commission were to make commissioners at will, so that you could be removed by your appointing authority at any time for no reason. And we are very, concerned about that. Obviously, the independence of ethics commissioners is part of what allows you to do your oversight role in a proper way. Other recommendation was to remove the commission's ability to place measures before voters. And again, that's a really important part of the commission's independent policy-making role. So that's something that also we're posing through this process. I think a really interesting thing about the ballot measure power is that that's actually how the city's public financing program was created back in the year 2000. The Ethics Commission placed a measure before voters, and that created the program, and it was actually very controversial at the time. It was a close vote. I think there would have been no way to get legislation through the Board of Supervisors approving that program, and now it's wildly popular in San Francisco. It's used by almost all of the leading candidates in supervisorial and mayoral races. So I think it's a really good example of why that power is so important, because the commission was channeling the wishes of the voters, wanting to create that kind of program. Incumbents in City Hall didn't like it because it could support challengers that might challenge them in an election, but nonetheless, the commission was able to take it directly to the voters, create that program, and now we have the industry-leading program that we have today. It's not clear if we would have that program if the commission hadn't had the ability to place measures before the voters. We need to maintain this power of the Ethics Commission. It should not be taken away. What we heard from the task force members was mixed on this point about ballot measure power. They seemed in general to be concerned that there's not enough deliberation with other city stakeholders on the front end before a measure is placed on the ballot, which I think is something that can easily be fixed without taking the power away entirely. So what we are suggesting to the task force staff who are currently researching this to bring it back to the task force for a future meeting is that some kind of notice provision be baked in, so that before the commission were to vote on a ballot measure, that essentially they would notice affected departments or the Board of Supervisors, or there's a number of ways you could set this up, but it's very similar to how the Board of Supervisors refers legislation to city departments under what's known as the 30-day rule. So legislation has to sit for 30 days while departments are noticed, and departments have the ability to give comment. We get these notices periodically, and the board has to wait before they hold a hearing. something very similar could be created for the Ethics Commission. That doesn't exist right now. So to me, that seems like it would address the concerns of the task force members. It would create that forum at the Board of Supervisors, perhaps the Rules Committee or GAO Committee, to have that discussion, to have city departments come in, discuss with us or with two of you if you'd like to come before the commission were to vote. So that's what we're advocating for. We actually met yesterday with the task force staff who are doing research and are going to submit a supplemental report to the task force. And so we've conveyed these recommendations to them. I believe that they're going to do research on them and perhaps recommend a number of different options to the task force that the task force members could choose between. And I think that they're actually going to consider the commissioner removal and the ballot measure power at 2 separate hearings. So one of those is going to be later this month, and the other one is going to be sometime in December. We're not sure yet. I feel cautiously optimistic about the for-cause removal point. I think that the task force members seemed receptive to the concerns that we expressed through our letter and through public comment that we gave at the hearing, that really would not be appropriate for an independent oversight agency. So they may want to change what constitutes official misconduct, or whether even official misconduct is what's required for cause removal, or maybe it's something else. So they're exploring that. But I think they have shown an unwillingness to just make ethics commissioners at will. So that's a positive development. Maybe I'll stop there and see if you have any further thoughts or questions about that.
With regard to the placing ballot measures forward by the Ethics Commission, even in our normal processes right now, departments, other agencies are able to come give comment at our regular meetings where we consider voting on certain matters. Isn't that right?
Absolutely. Before the commission voted to place what became Proposition D on the November 2024 ballot, I believe the commission considered that ballot measure at 13 public meetings here at City Hall. We met with affected employee bargaining units for about 18 months. We had over a dozen meetings with them. We did meet with other departmental representatives just to talk directly with them about how the measure would affect their departments. So we definitely did a lot, but I also want to be really receptive if there are folks who are saying, we would have liked to have more. We would have liked to talk to you. We didn't know that. We didn't know necessarily who the people were who wanted to talk to us. We went through our normal process of agendizing our, agenda materials and noticing employee bargaining units as required. We were working through the normal channels that we use, but if there are additional channels that folks want to create that would supplement that process and not get rid of the process, I think we should consider it and be open to it. And a little more process would be okay. This is something that we as an agency don't do a lot. We've done 5 measures in 32 years. It's a pretty rare, special thing that we do have a lot of process around already. So I think if we're going to tack on a little bit more process, that would be okay in my view.
Thank you. Any further questions from the commission? No. Thank you. We will take public comment on this item. Is there anyone in the room who'd wish to make public comment? Seeing none, is there anyone in the queue?
Checking the queue to see if there's any callers. And Vice Chair Salahi, there are no hands raised.
Thank you. And since there's no action requested, I don't think we need to take a vote. So we will proceed to the next item. I now call agenda item number 6, discussion and possible action regarding request for waiver of post-employment restrictions for Chris Block.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Ryan Abusa, and I am a Senior Policy Research Specialist at the Ethics Commission. For Agenda Item 6 today, it includes discussion and possible action regarding a waiver request for post-employment restrictions that was received from Chris Block. Mr. Block submitted a formal request to the Commission on October 22nd asking that certain post-employment restrictions outlined in Section 3.234 of the Campaign and Governmental Conduct Code be waived. In this case, the one-year ban on communications with your former department. Earlier this year, Mr. Block left city service from the Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing and took a position with the San Francisco Housing Accelerator Fund. In his current position, Mr. Block will be working on a project that is led by the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development that could potentially involve periodic communications with his former department, as they were also invited to participate as a project stakeholder. Their participation is what triggers this waiver request, given that Mr. Block is a former city employee who has been out of city service for less than 1 year. He would be representing his employer in communications with his former department with the intent to influence a government decision they are involved with. As a reminder, the Ethics Commission has the ability to waive post-employment restrictions if they determine that granting a waiver would not create the potential for undue influence or unfair advantage. As part of the consideration process, staff review criteria such as the nature and scope of communications the individual will have with their former department, the subject matter of such communications, the former position held by the officer or employee, the type of inside knowledge the individual may possess, and any other factors the Commission deems relevant, all of which are used to guide the Commissioners in making their determination. Staff analysis is outlined in greater detail in the memo, but given the minimal overlap in scope between Mr. Block's previous and current positions, the fact that the request for participation originates from the city, and these communications are not being used by Mr. Block to get his current employer's foot in the door, since they are an existing city partner and were invited as part of work on an ongoing project, and the fact that this effort is not led directly by his former department, and all involved communications seem to be related to the provision of expertise and feedback, staff do not see major potential for undue influence or unfair advantage if this waiver were to be granted. So based on the facts provided in the request, staff recommend that the Commission consider approving a limited waiver for Mr. Block under the scope outlined in his request and our accompanying memo, so only for the specific meetings and communications that take place during the 6-month duration of this project. Mr. Block is also present today to speak about his request, and he will be available along with me and Director Ford for any questions from the Commission.
Thank you. And thank you for your helpful memo walking through the factors. It was really useful. Does Mr. Block wish to make any comments?
Good morning. My name is Chris Block. First of all, I'd like to thank the director, the staff, and the commission. I'm not going to go over the specifics. I think the memo was really helpful. What I really wanted to come and I wanted to do two things. First of all, I just wanted to thank the staff and the commission. I first started working with Michael and then worked most of the process with Ryan. The staff could not have been more responsive. It was clear what the process was when I was coming here. There was a real attempt by staff to understand the context in which I was asking for this waiver. We went back and forth a little bit just to get clarity. I'm obviously also thank them for the recommendation, but most importantly for the process we went through. So I'm here to express that gratitude and then to answer any specific questions, of course, that the commission might have.
Thank you.
And I don't know if you want me to stay here during the process or go sit down. Whatever you tell me to do, I will.
Thank you. I had one quick question for you, actually. The staff recommended a limited waiver. Is that okay with you, or did you have concerns about the scope of the waiver that they recommended?
No, actually, we presented, we also asked for a limited waiver.
Okay.
The waiver we asked for was limited, and that's what the staff has suggested approval for. But thank you for asking. If I could get an unlimited waiver, I would do that. No, I'm kidding.
Thank you. Any questions from members of the commission? No. Thank you. With that, we will take public comment on this item. Thank you, Mr. Block.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the room who wishes to make public comment on item number 6? Seeing nobody, is there anyone in the queue?
Vice Chair Salahi, we're checking the queue. One moment. And Vice Chair Salahi, we have no callers.
Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to make a motion on this item?
I'll move to approve the limited waiver.
I'll second that.
On the motion to approve the limited waiver, Commissioner Ye,
Aye.
Commissioner Sai,
Aye.
and Vice Chair Salahi.
Aye.
And Vice Chair Salahi, with 3 votes in the affirmative, the motion passes.
Thank you. I now call agenda item 7, discussion and possible action regarding proposed stipulation, decision, and order in the matter of Mark Keller, SFEC complaint number 25-883.
Good morning, Chair Salahi, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Eric Willett, Senior Investigator with the Ethics Commission. Commissioners, the matter before you today is a settlement agreement between the Commission and Respondent Mark Kelleher. Commissioners may remember that this matter came before them in April of this year, and it was not approved at that time. What's different in this proposed stipulation is the clarity that investigators uncovered and determined and established that any of the actions taken while disqualified by Respondent Kelleher had no financial effect upon any party. Specifically, the decisions that related to any contracts, those contracts had already been entered into by the department and were merely for informational purposes, that when they were brought before the Commission and Commissioners voted, and they had no material financial effect at that time because of being prior approved. So this stipulated agreement includes a lower penalty amount than what was proposed in the April matter, and that lower amount is supported by analogous matters that the Commission has resolved in the recent past, and also reflects that there was minimal public harm due to the actions taken having no material financial effect upon any party. I'm here to answer any questions, as well as Director of Enforcement Matthews is here as well, too.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the commissioners? No. I just wanted to thank you and your colleagues for taking a second look at this case and explaining the rationale in your memo. It's very useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And also the legal counsel for respondents here, too, if commissioners would like to ask any questions of him.
Is there anyone in the room who would like to make public comment on this item?
Commissioners, for the record, I'm Mark Kelleher, San Francisco Human Rights Commissioner. I'm grateful to the Ethics Commission staff for their fairness during this process of resolving the situation, and to the Ethics Commissioners, you all today, for your thoughtful consideration as well. Please bear with me as I read the rest of this statement for your consideration and for the record. For over 15 years, I have volunteered to serve our city, and particularly the LGBTQ+ community, to provide a voice and insight as the HRC and other city leaders develop policies, funding initiatives, and programs to help improve the lives of our fellow citizens. I continue to be profoundly grateful for this opportunity to serve, and I am personally, I think unquestionably, committed in my actual behavior and actions as Commissioner to serve ethically and in the spirit of good governance. During the last several years, just to kind of shed light on this violation, I've been preoccupied with building a consulting business, working with not-for-profits. I deeply regret overlooking several of the email notices about some of the required sunshine and ethics trainings. Even more deeply, I regret inadvertently voting as a commissioner on agenda items, not knowing I was disqualified as I made those votes. As you know from the stipulation documents, the HRC staff managing the meetings did not inform me I was disqualified to vote. If I had known, of course, I wouldn't have. Thankfully, as you can see, none of the votes impacted budget or policy decision-making in a way that would be a conflict of interest, or other than being consent votes on decisions that were already made and contracts entered into by HRC. And I just want to mention, too, that my failure to take several of these recent, really beneficial, of course, training webinars doesn't mean that I'm not deeply familiar with and adherent to the principles of ethical behavior and good governance. I just want to put that on the record. I've taken dozens of the Ethics Commission's trainings over the years, as well as participated in required trainings that are very similar annually during my 25 years as a public university administrator here in the Bay Area. So just rest assured that this lesson has been learned. I'm currently up on all my trainings, and it would never happen again. I just ask you all to accept the stipulation agreement so that we can settle the matter today, with my apologies, of course, to the process and the system, and knowing that, that I'm earnestly committed to keeping up with these ethics trainings in the future and continuing to serve in the spirit of good governance. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the room who'd like to make public comment? Seeing no one, is there anyone in the queue?
Vice Chair Salahi, we are checking the queue for callers. And Vice Chair Salahi, there are no callers in the queue.
Thank you. Is there a motion on item number 7?
I move to approve the proposed stipulation.
I'll second.
On the motion to approve the stipulation for item 7, Commissioner Ye?
Aye.
Commissioner Sai?
Aye.
And Vice Chair Salahi?
Aye.
And with 3 votes in the affirmative, Vice Chair Salahi, the motion passes.
Thank you.
I now call agenda item 8, discussion and possible action regarding behested payment waiver legislation.
Hello again, Commissioners. This agenda item includes discussion and possible action regarding behested payment legislation that was continued from the Commission's October meeting, given that we only had 3 Commission members in attendance, all of whom had expressed interest in a greater discussion of this ordinance. So to provide a quick recap, this item contains an ordinance that would amend the city's behested payment rules. The ordinance was introduced by Board President Raphael Mandelman, who is here to speak on this item today. Since 2022, the city has prohibited officers and designated employees from soliciting behested payments from interested parties. However, the rule has a waiver provision that allows the Board of Supervisors to waive the rule at the request of city departments, although otherwise not for themselves. Waiver resolutions are required to summarize the purpose of the solicitations to be made, to identify any interested parties or types of interested parties who would be solicited if they are known. They are required to state why the department believes those parties are interested parties and to issue a finding that the waiver would not create an appearance of impropriety and would be in the public interest. Approved waivers apply for a 6-month period into the future and cannot be applied retroactively. They are also required to be publicly posted to Data SF by the clerk of the board within 30 days of approval. The legislation that was introduced by President Mandelman would change the provisions of the law to allow the Board of Supervisors to grant behested payment waivers to its officers and employees. After review, staff do not believe this change would severely undermine the overall rule, since the waiver requirements that were previously advocated for by the Commission would remain in place, and the waivers themselves would still be granted if a majority of supervisors agree to the waiver and took public action to approve it. The public nature of these waivers and the required agreement among members of the Board of Supervisors serves as a bit of a check against things that could lead to the appearance of impropriety or impropriety itself. The ordinance would also require that the position of city employees or officers to whom the waiver would apply would also be included in the resolution to provide further clarity around who is or is not able to make solicitations under a waiver. Staff here are supportive of this amendment to again add further clarity and specificity to the waiver process. On a final note, Ethics Commission staff have included an additional amendment to correct the name of the chapter. Section 1, Chapter 6 is still titled Behested Payment Reporting, which references a previous reporting requirement that no longer exists. So our amendment would simply update the title of the chapter to Behested Payments. On a final note, the attached memo is largely still the same, but we have updated the analysis section, including our review of previous behested payment waivers in response to some of the discussion from the October meeting and to reflect the passage of 2 additional behested payment waivers in the interim. I am available with Director Ford to answer questions and will again remind the acting chair that President Mandelman is also here to speak on this item and answer questions. Thank you.
President Mandelman, would you like to make some remarks, or Chair Ford, would you like to go first?
I'll just add one thing while President Mandelman steps up, which is that also elected officials have to file the Form 803 to disclose behested payments. So any member of the board that is behesting a payment would then have to file the 803 under existing state law.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for your service. I don't know that I have a ton to add to the excellent staff presentation. I think this legislation is pretty simple. It would extend to the Board of Supervisors the same ability to grant its members waivers for the solicitation of behested payments that are available for every other elected and appointed official in San Francisco government. As you know, and as you have described, Proposition E, passed in 2022, prohibits elected officials, department heads, commissioners, and certain employees from soliciting donations from interested parties unless the Board of Supervisors grants a waiver based on a finding that the waiver would be in the public interest. In the years since Prop E's passage, the mayor, the city attorney, the assessor recorder, the treasurer, the Department of Public Health, OEWD, Rec and Park, HSH, the fire department, the Department of Technology, the airport, have all sought and been granted waivers to address urgent needs, including but not limited to the purchase of fire trucks, expanding shelter capacity, supporting immigrant legal services, responding to the fentanyl crisis. 20 total waivers have been approved, and 4 are currently in the legislative process. The city's restricted source rules are complicated, and absent these waivers, that complexity and the very high likelihood of unintentionally breaking the rules strongly discourage elected officials from fundraising even to meet the most dire and pressing needs. Waivers give officials the clarity and confidence they need to make appropriate and reportable asks rather than worrying about inadvertently crossing a line. Proposition E's exclusion of members of the Board of Supervisors is frankly inexplicable to me. Supervisors are often closest to our constituents and the nonprofits and community-based partners that are addressing urgent public needs in our communities every day. And in the current budget environment, as we face a hostile federal administration that is attacking our most vulnerable communities and driving expanding need, even at the same time as we experience pressure and the threat of the loss of federal funding to our city budget, the exclusion makes even less sense to me. So, as you've heard, the ordinance before you would allow individual supervisors to request behested payment waivers under the same public interest standard that applies to everyone else. Any such waiver request would still go through the full public legislative process, would require identification of potential donors where known, explanation of the purpose of the solicitation, and a demonstration of the public interest served. And as with all behested payment waivers, it would remain subject to the same reporting requirements applicable to other elected and appointed officials who use such waivers. I want to thank Director Ford and Michael Canning from the Commission, along with Deputy City Attorneys Brad Russi and Kathleen Redes for their work on the legislation. I want to thank my legislative aide, Melanie Mathewson, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you got any.
Thank you. Any questions from members of the Commission?
Yeah, sure. What are some examples that the supervisors would seek a waiver for? Like, what are some of the types of situations where request this, like that they weren't able to?
Yeah. I can't speak for my colleagues. And every supervisor has a different district with different needs. I am a gay supervisor, and I am particularly concerned about the cuts in city funding for LGBTQ nonprofits that we saw this year and that we're going to see in years going forward. So trans film festivals or service for queer youth or information referral for queer young people who are arriving in the city or job training for queer folks. I mean, that's one piece that happens to be sort of in my direct lane, and probably I can imagine requesting a waiver to solicit contributions to meet urgent needs in the queer community that the city is no longer able to fund.
Another follow-up question. We received a lot of letters from the public with concerns that it's the supervisors that are approving it themselves. Do you think there should be a third party that should be overseeing this, like the commission here?
I mean, we could think about how that would work. I do think that the 10 members of the Board of Supervisors who are not the person who is requesting the waiver will have to, I mean, are going to have to make that decision. It's not the supervisor, him or herself, who needs the waiver, who's granting it. It's the, it's the entirety of the body. So I think that's an adequate check. Again, I'm not quite clear. Also, given just the history of the legislation and the scandals that we saw, it doesn't seem to me like the bulk of this problem was at the Board of Supervisors. I don't think the exclusion of members of the Board of Supervisors makes a ton of sense.
Thank you. I had one timing question for you, President Mandelman. I know this was continued at the prior meeting. I'm just curious if there's urgency at the Board of Supervisors for it to be decided at this
meeting. I think there's urgency in the sense that the needs are great. I also think, you all should do what is your normal practice. I don't think there's like a waiver that has got to get submitted immediately. I would like to see this get done, and I would like to see this commission act on it as soon as you can. If you don't feel like you can do that today, I would love to see you do it as soon as you can.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I had a question that may be better directed to Mr. Abusa. So sometimes when we consider matters, I think staff memoranda will have comparisons to other jurisdictions. So just for background, do our peer jurisdictions, the ones we typically look to, do they have similar behested payment prohibitions or regulations like this?
Not that I was able to find in my research, no.
Not, you weren't able to find provisions that allow behested payments?
So beyond kind of what is at the state level kind of in the law with regard to behested payment reporting.
I believe this is an area where San Francisco has decided to go well above and beyond what the state requires and well above and beyond what other jurisdictions have done.
I guess my question is, do other jurisdictions allow behested payments?
Within the state of California, there are not too many municipalities or counties that have the kind of interested party rule that San Francisco has. But I will tell you from my experience at our annual conference, being on a panel discussing behested payments with other jurisdictions, other cities and states, primarily on the East Coast, do prohibit this kind of conduct. They don't call them behested payments all the time. Oftentimes it will be looped into their bribery rules or their gift rules. So they just have a little bit different structure. They don't use the same terminology. They don't, the mechanics of the rule may work differently. But the notion of a government official asking a contractor or permittee to give money to charity, that has been identified as a problem and is prohibited in various ways in other jurisdictions. But it doesn't correlate precisely. It's hard to look and say, like, do they have the same kind of rule, or would they have a waiver process? We'd have to go look. Like, we could do that research. We could reach out. I know New York City, City of Philadelphia have similar rules. We could get in touch with them and see if they have waivers to those rules, if that would be helpful.
And as I understand it, the primary concern, if these are not prohibited, is that there's this pay-to-play happening in the background, but through the waiver process, that would all have to be publicly disclosed through the approval process and therefore subject to public scrutiny and response. And if there were concerns, the political process would presumably address those about particular arrangements.
That's the crux of our recommendation. That's why we think this is appropriate to do. That if you look at the kinds of behested payments that were problematic and that were revealed through the federal corruption investigation, these are not the kind of behested payments that anybody would ever seek a waiver for from the Board of Supervisors. These were shakedowns. They were essentially bribes. These were, for example, a building inspector asking somebody who's subject to an inspection to give money to that person's child's sports club. If that came before the Board of Supervisors, I'm assuming that would not be approved. And in fact, I think nobody would even have the gall to request that kind of waiver. I think the waivers that we've seen are much more programmatic in nature. They support either city operations or they support city affiliates, nonprofits that provide services in conjunction with the city. They aren't little pet projects or kind of shell nonprofits that we saw in the corruption scandal.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Is there a motion on this item? Do you want to hear public comment first? Yeah. Okay, let's call public comment first. Is there anyone in the room who'd like to make public comment?
Hello, my name is David Schmidt. As a longtime San Francisco resident and supporter of the California Clean Money Campaign, I urge you to reject the proposal in item 8, which would allow the Board of Supervisors themselves to waive the ban against their own asking for behested payments from interested parties like city contractors. This severely undermines Proposition E, approved by more than 69% of the voters. In 2020, the city controller produced a public integrity review of pay-to-play politics in San Francisco and found that behested payments presented a high risk of corruption. When behested payments occur, regular San Franciscans stand to lose. This would open the door to corruption. Please keep it closed. Vote no on item 8. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Carla Kincaid Yoshikawa. I'm a resident of the Central Sunset, and I also am a member or volunteer with the California Clean Money Campaign. I've been working with them since 2011 to try and get money, the influence of money out of politics as much as we can. I understand that in 2021, the first limits or on behested payments came from the rules, the Ethics Commission, which I really appreciate, and it was against the highest levels, the mayor, et cetera, not being able to do behested requests or payments. Then in 2022, with the support of the Ethics Commission, the Board of Supervisors put Proposition E on the ballot, and kudos for them, and they limited themselves, and I respect that. I think we've got a little bit of the fox guarding the hen house. I'm the grandchild of farmers. I understand what that means. I'm also the mother of 2 children who grew up, and I understand very well that the idea that everybody else is doing it as a reason to do it is still alive and well in the adult community. That doesn't make it a good idea. We have some very good policies here in San Francisco that nobody else has, and that's part of what makes us what we are. This, in one of the arguments against the behested, or in favor of Prop E said, unlike gifts or bribes, behested payments can enrich public officials indirectly through outside slush funds. Behested payments have become the preferred loophole for special interests who want to get around laws that prevent outright bribery. My own experience as an adult is the few among us who are not honest and trustworthy will find every loophole and every way to use the system to be corrupt. The San Francisco Ethics Commission's mission is to practice, paraphrased, to practice and promote the highest standards of integrity and government by delivering impactful programs that promote fair, transparent, and accountable governmental decision-making. This idea does not do any of that. It takes us backwards. We need to get the corrupting influence of dark money, hidden money out of our system. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Pamela, and I'm a San Francisco resident since 1982, and I volunteered and am a supporter of California Clean Money Campaign. I'm here to ask you to reject the proposal to allow the Board of Supervisors to waive the ban against their asking for behested payments from interested parties. San Franciscans deserve to know that public officials are making decisions based on their best judgment and not on behalf of large corporations and special interests. when city officials raise money from entities who stand to benefit from their actions, their duty to the public is impaired. Thank you so much for this.
Hello, my name is Caroline. I'm here also with the California Clean Money and as a resident of San Francisco. And we're shocked that people in government still want to keep the pay-to-play tactics. Opponents to this argument fail to explain why government needs to be raised by the same parties seeking to secure government contracts, permits, or relief. Please vote no on item 8. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else in the room who'd like to make public comment?
Thank you, and good morning, Acting Chair Salahi and Commissioners. My name is Lee Hepner. I'm a former employee of the City and County of San Francisco who had a principal role in crafting the Behested Payments Ordinance and the subsequent ballot measure Proposition E, and thank you, Mr. Ford, for all your help with that. I'm deeply concerned that at a moment when corruption is taking center stage under the Trump administration, the City and County of San Francisco is contemplating rolling back ethics protections that were established just a few years ago in the wake of a decade of scandal that toppled no fewer than 5 department heads and required federal intervention by the United States Attorney. Let me be clear. Opening the door to allow elected officials to request money from people seeking contracts or other financial benefit from the city is a gateway to corruption. These are bribes. And this ordinance represents an erosion of public trust in government. In recent weeks, supervisors have represented that they will still be able to hold themselves accountable when deciding whether to exempt themselves from this anti-corruption measure. That is a fiction. There have been 15 waivers of the Behested Payments Ordinance this year alone. That's a 300% increase over the prior administration, and every single one of those waivers was passed unanimously, without discussion, without public comment on the board's consent calendar. Worse, those waivers defy the spirit of the law by failing to explain what interested parties are being solicited and for what specific purpose. Respectfully, Mr. Ford, these are very broad waiver requests, and you can look them up in the record. The result is an effective repeal of this ordinance that was affirmed by 70% of San Francisco voters just 3 years ago. We have also heard scare tactics that the supervisors are incapable of fundraising for public interests. This is also untrue. In one report, a supervisor says that they were prohibited from soliciting assistance for a church renovation project in their district. I did some poking around, and the alleged interested party had not sought a contract from the Board of Supervisors in 25 years, far outside the one-year prohibition on soliciting from interested parties. And this is an education problem. This is a compliance problem. I'm further troubled that officials believe it is their role to be fundraisers from private interests for core public interests. Earlier this year, the mayor stood with billionaires Chris Larson and Michael Moritz, 2 individuals who have gone to extraordinary lengths to seek influence in City Hall to announce their $3 million donation to a street cleaning program. This city has a bigger problem. If it cannot find the money in its $15 billion budget to clean our streets or to protect immigrants, workers, and LGBTQ people in accordance with the law without resorting to conduct that risks severe ethical violations. As a member of the LGBTQ community, as a gay man, it is an offense to leverage marginalized communities and to say that their needs are predicated on the need for public corruption. I encourage the Commission to oppose this ordinance, and respectfully thank you for your time.
Esther Marks. I'm speaking as an individual, and I can't say anything more than what's been said before, urging you to reject this behested payment measure. And I noticed that there are only 3 commissioners, and 4 commissioners would be needed to act on this measure. So I asked the 3 of you to go ahead and refuse to accept this amendment and let it rest there. When Supervisor Mandelman mentioned that the Board of Supervisors is the only entity that cannot request a behested payments, that the other, the mayor, the city attorney, et cetera. I feel that this ordinance should be strengthened, not weakened. So again, I urge you three to please reject this measure and, if anything, strengthen, work to strengthen, do something to strengthen it.
Is there anyone else in the room who'd like to make public comment? Seeing none, is there anyone in the queue? That's correct.
Checking the queue now. And Vice Chair Salahi, looks like we have 4 people in the queue. Give us one moment for them to connect. Hello, caller, can you hear me?
Hello?
Hello, welcome. Your 3 minutes starts now.
Hi, my name is Mary Scheib. I thank you for holding this meeting and for taking my testimony. I'm a member of Indivisible San Francisco Local and State Action. We're joining together with the Coalition of California Clean Money campaign and the California Common Cause to oppose this ordinance, item number 8. Indivisible's mission is to hold our local officials accountable to extend democracy, fairness, transparency, and progress towards a political culture that serves the will of all the people. As our democratic process is under threat nationally, it is especially important to hold on to and cherish it locally, as the Ethics Commission has done in the past. Therefore, Indivisible San Francisco opposes the behest payment waiver ordinance, allowing the Board of Supervisors to grant themselves waivers to San Francisco's prohibition on soliciting payments from parties who have business with the city. San Francisco voters passed Proposition E, as was noted, by 70% in 2022, expressly prohibiting this kind of corruption. Even if unintentional or for worthy causes, the waiver of the behest payments would nullify the will of the voters, be a conflict of interest, and return to a past culture of corruption, ripe for pay-to-play and distrust. As stated in our letter from the to the Commission, as the Board of Supervisors conducts the people's business, they can adopt simple rules and practices to help them comply with the law, support transparency, and the public's right to know, as we've suggested. I was struck by the discussion in your agenda document of the City Sunshine Ordinance, assuring deliberations of all government are conducted before the people and open to review. I also appreciate your past leadership in behested payment restrictions. In that light, I urge the Ethics Committee to stand firm and deny this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Vice Chair Salahi, we do have more people in the queue. We will give a moment for them to connect. Caller, can you hear me?
Hello.
Hello, welcome.
Yes.
Your 3 minutes starts now.
Okay, thank you. I'm Trent Lang, Executive Director of the California Clean Money Campaign. We've been working since 2002 to reduce the influence of big money in California politics, with over 15,000 supporters here in San Francisco. First, I want to say we're very sympathetic to elected officials who want to do good and help important causes by asking people to donate to needy charities. We especially want to make sure the rules are clear and that they don't get in trouble for incidental violations. That's why we worked with State Senator Ben Allen on SB 360 this year to clarify state law so elected officials don't risk disclosure violations when they make good faith public appeals without knowing a donor made behested donation in response, such as on TV, radio, or public speeches. But allowing officials to request donations from city contractors, developers, and other interested parties is a very different matter that will always raise public perceptions about pay-to-play. How could it not, when the fate of a contractor's proposal depends on the very person urgently asking them to donate? That's why it was so important that in 2021, the Ethics Commission banned officials from soliciting behested payments from interested parties. Your leadership was crucial, and we commend you for it. That's also why the voters overwhelmingly passed Prop E 3 years ago with nearly 70% of the vote, extending the prohibitions explicitly to supervisors soliciting donations from contractors. So we're now surprised, as you can see many are, that the supervisors would ask to give themselves the ability to waive those voter-approved rules. Even the appearance of supervisors voting waivers for themselves is a little bit mind-boggling. The voters did not vote to allow supervisors to waive the restrictions themselves. That was not in Prop B. By our last count, you should have received over 160 public comments from San Francisco Clean Money and California Common Cause supporters alone, asking you to reject it. Ask yourselves how often that many people comment to you on an item asking you to reject it. As most of those comments say, passing it would be a stunning reversal of your own leadership in establishing protections against potentially corruptive behested payments and a betrayal of the voters' will. Please reject it. That said, we're very open, as our letter said, to supervisors being accidentally caught up in inadvertent violations. That's why the letter you received from our coalition suggested compliance-oriented reforms rather than waivers, such as a central database, et cetera. We'd be happy to work with you and the legislature to make those compliance-oriented reforms so that people don't get caught up accidentally, but the law itself is continued to be protected. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Vice Chair Salahi, we are connecting to our next caller. One moment.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Dia Zarmi, and I'm the Money and Politics Program Manager at California Common Cause. California Common Cause urges you to oppose Ordinance Number 250947, which would allow the Board of Supervisors to grant waivers for themselves from the city's ban on soliciting behested payments from interested parties. This proposal would undermine a core anti-corruption safeguard that voters overwhelmingly approved through Proposition E, as we've heard, in 2022, which was a measure born out of the City Controller's Public Integrity Review, which found that behested payments pose a risk of pay-to-play corruption. Proposition E was clear: city officials, department heads, and commissioners should not be soliciting donations from those doing business with or seeking approvals from the city. Allowing the board to vote on its own exemptions would create an obvious conflict of interest and also erode public trust. If there are concerns about compliance or inadvertent violations, they can be addressed through practical solutions such as databasing interested parties, donor attestations, or cure periods, rather than through waivers that gut the law itself. San Franciscans voted to clean up City Hall. The Ethics Commission led the way in establishing these protections, and your leadership is needed now again to uphold the integrity and the intent of Proposition E. Thank you for the time to speak on this matter.
Thank you for your comments. Vice Chair Salahi, we have two more in the queue. Give us one moment while we connect to the next caller. Welcome, caller. Can you hear us?
Hello.
Hello, welcome. Your 3 minutes starts now.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. My name's Stephen Hill, and I've been involved in authoring many of the campaign finance laws in San Francisco for the last couple of decades. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to speak on this matter. I also have known President Mandelman for many, many years and highly respect him. But his arguments in favor of this are utterly unconvincing. The idea that the individual supervisors will act as a check on each other is not real world. In fact, what happens is you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. I'll give you your behested waiver if you give me mine. And so it just sets up a pay-to-play dynamic within the Board of Supervisors itself that just can't be healthy going forward. You certainly don't want supervisors, trying to convince their colleagues to give them a behested waiver in response for them giving them the behested waiver that they're requesting. The idea that the Board of Supervisors can't do this and others can, as one of the other commenters said, you should be going in the other direction. Prop E didn't contemplate carving out these enormous exceptions for different parts of San Francisco government. You should instead close the loopholes that exist for the mayor and other offices. The behested payments part is it has to do with businesses that have contracts with the city. There are lots of other businesses out there that do not have contracts with the city, and the supervisors can contact them, and nonprofits can reach out to them on their own and ask for donations. So it's not like this is preventing the supervisors or anyone else from receiving donations. It's just you can't do it with businesses that have contracts with the city. This is just common sense. This is a red line that shouldn't be crossed about allowing businesses to have contracts with the city or trying to get contracts with the city to let go of this kind of a rule. If you look at the city of Los Angeles, you have 3 recent city council members that are now been sentenced to prison, and a 4th one that is now on trial, exactly for this kind of you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back kind of waivers. And so you don't want San Francisco copying Los Angeles in this regard. It won't end well. I urge you to vote no against this behested payment proposal. And finally, thing I want to say, I think I have a few more seconds. You know, it used to be with ethics commissions. I've been lobbying the ethics commission for decades. We used to be able to get your email addresses from your website and then to reach out to you individually. Your email addresses are no longer available to the public.
Thank you for your comments. Your time has expired.
In a way that would allow us to talk.
Vice Chair Salahi, we're checking the queue to see if there's any more callers. Welcome, caller. Can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. Welcome. Your 3 minutes starts now.
Oh, cool. All right, right on. Hey, so this is San Francisco, okay? Yeah, you know, first question I have, and obviously it's going to be rhetorical, was who tabled this? I'm totally confused. I mean, this is corruption 101. I mean, this is the root of all corruption. I don't know who tabled it, Mandelman. I don't know who the hell tabled this thing, or I don't know what's going on. But whenever you put something out there like this, think of it this way. This is taxpayers' money. Yeah, that's why people are calling in and people are, you know, getting irritated about this. But, you know, go back in time, you see Feinstein, she retired or she died with $1.5 billion. She was a billionaire. Pelosi's not living, you know, she's not going to soup kitchens. All these supervisors, they're not going to soup kitchens because they have a way to work around the system. This is fraud. This is absolute fraud. This is exactly what the Government Audit and Oversight Commission should be looking into. This is what the Ethics Commission should be looking into. I mean, we just had a member of the Board of Supervisors resign yesterday because of all this corruption, because of all this, you know, I mean, look at how shady she is, you know, with the freezing of the animals and this cooking the books, and the IRS is probably going to get involved, and Jenkins is involved, and all this other stuff. But this is fraud 101. You guys got to, I mean, I can't believe this. Also, you know, for future business, I don't know, I guess you're going to have an agenda item for that one. How about the 2 horses that went to Japan on the taxpayers' money, Melgar and Ronan? I mean, this is like fraud 101. If this is why the community does not trust politicians. We do not trust you guys. We think you guys are scum. We think you guys are the scum of the earth. You should just resign. You should do what Alcatraz did the other day and simply resign. We need to rebuild. We need to rebuild our city with ethical leaders, leaders being the key word, individuals that care about community rather than care about making bank in their own pocket. All right? Hopefully that helps, but also you only have 3 of 5 commissioners there, so you cannot vote on this. I don't know if Flo and what's her name, Frenchie, I don't know where they're at, but they should be around. Hopefully, you know, scare them off. All right, bye.
Thank you for your comments. Checking the queue for any more callers. And Vice Chair Salahi, there are no more callers in the queue.
Thank you. Before we have discussion amongst the commissioners, I just wanted to get clarification from the City Attorney's Office regarding the requirements for voting. My understanding is that as long as a majority vote of all the members approves the proposed amendment, that's sufficient. So we could vote today, but it would require a unanimous vote since 3 of 5 is a majority. Is that?
That's correct, and that's what's set out in Section 3.600 of the Campaign and Governmental Conduct Code. Any amendment must be approved in advance by a majority vote of all members of the Ethics Commission.
That said, there may be reasons for us to wait for a larger group of commissioners, but we should discuss today and see if there are areas of concern that any commissioners have for the supervisor's office or for the staff to consider. Thank you. A public comment has closed, so we can't address that now, but we will have an opportunity later for additional public comment.
I had one question. One of the points, this was for President Mandelman. Thank you for being here. One of the points raised in public comment was that some of these waivers are considered in the consent calendar. So am I right that the public can, or...
I mean, these waivers each go to there is not a ton of discussion at full board meetings of any item on the agenda. I think the point is disingenuous. Items that are introduced to the Board of Supervisors go to committee and are discussed fully at committee. There's been some robust discussion about these waivers because I think there are different perspectives on the Board of Supervisors about them and about whether to grant them, but they have been heard. There are opportunities. I think some of them have been amended. Files have been duplicated. Supervisors have opinions about the waivers, and they are fully discussed. And in fact, there have been some of them do get pulled off, and there's actually discussion at the board there has been for a couple of them, which is unusual for our full board meetings on Tuesdays. But these absolutely go to committees. There are absolutely opportunities for public comment. Members of the Board of Supervisors express their own issues, concerns, amend them. So that's, I believe, untrue.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll share some of my thoughts about this. I definitely hear the concerns from members of the public today. We share those, and we share the goal of ensuring that there's not illicit use of money or other influence in San Francisco's governance. My understanding of this is informed by the fact that the waiver process already exists for every other official in San Francisco, and that this is extending the same process to the Board of Supervisors. There are some concerns about the level of generality in some of the prior waiver requests as described in the staff report, but I think that those are mitigated by the fact that the Form 803 has to be filed within 30 days of any specific behested payment that is made in excess of $5,000 within a calendar year. So even if there may not be a great level of specificity on the front end when the board initially submits a waiver, when a supervisor or other city department submits a waiver request, there is ultimately, if a behested payment is made. We have a background of several years of waiver requests being approved by the Board of Supervisors involving other city departments, and at least I'm not personally aware of controversies or public objections surrounding how those have fared afterwards. So to me, this is a matter of striking a balance and ensuring that there's sufficient transparency for public feedback, but not necessarily putting in restrictions that we have through experience learned the public interest might not be served by. So.
Just want to say I echo Vice Chair or Acting Chair Salahi's comments. I want to thank everyone for their public comments. They're very helpful. Obviously, we are all here because we care very much about ethics in government. I think, or I take it that a lot of the main issue from a lot of the public commenters is with behested payments generally and not the specific proposal we're looking at. I do think, there are valid concerns with behested payments generally. I think that should probably be a separate discussion. So I agree with the Vice Chair that given the current structure we have right now, the fact that the Board of Supervisors is accepted seems a bit unusual.
I have a question for Mr. Ford. With respect to the 20, how many waivers are there in total? 20 waiver resolutions that have been approved, or more than that, that we see in Table 1. Have you looked into any of these to see if there was any improperness here?
I'm going to defer this question to Mr. Abusa, who did this research.
I did not check. When I was reviewing, it was purely to look at the level of specificity to kind of better address some concerns echoed by Chair Flores-Fang at the October meeting, just about how specific they tend to be, but my research did not include any sort of review of kind of what happened afterwards.
So have there been any complaints with respect to any of these items in the past?
I mean, we can't publicly talk about the complaints that we receive. Those are required under the city charter to be confidential. I can certainly say we have not had any public case resolutions concerning any of these. There haven't been any PC reports or any STIPs that have arisen out of these particular waivers, but other than that, unfortunately, I can't talk about whether there's any complaints about them. But we haven't received any public comment. These have just not been an issue that we've really seen any interest in, to be honest.
And Director Ford, is there anything you can say or share about whether there have been Form 803 compliance issues?
No, I have not seen Form 803 compliance issues. I think we're really trying to work with the FPPC to allow us to change how we as a city do 803s. I think that's a completely separate topic, but that's really where our focus is on the Form 803. But I've not seen compliance issues around behested payment waivers concerning 803.
Is there a motion amongst the commissioners?
I'm wondering we should have this as a full commissioner vote, given the public concern here.
Yeah.
So I move for a full commission vote.
I'll second that.
Given the sentiment on the commission and the requirements in order to pass an amendment, I think we will not be voting on this action today and be continuing it to the next meeting. Hopefully we'll have a fuller attendance at that one. But I want to thank President Mandelman's office and all the members of the public for their thoughtful interventions today. I don't think we need a vote on tabling vote. Okay. Yeah. I now call agenda item 9, discussion and possible action on items for future meetings. Does any commissioner wish to speak to this item?
Nope.
I invite any members of the public who are in person and wish to provide public comment on agenda item 9 to please proceed to the podium if you wish to speak.
Vice Chair Salahi, checking the queue for any callers regarding item 9. One moment.
There will be the next one. I'm sorry for the. We will have general public comment coming up on the next item. So, the next item
After this item, it will be item 10 for you to be able to speak. And it looks like we have one caller. Give us one moment for it to connect. Welcome, caller. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I could hear you.
So, I mean, this is exactly what I'm talking about, like future agenda items. And, you know, I'm actually befuddled. I'm actually beside myself as to why any of the commissioners, granted that there's 2 absent, why nobody's bringing up any other commission matters, such as the trip to Japan, where the taxpayers' money was spent, the Lurie thing about him giving Jed some sort of bro deal. You know, I mean, these are the issues where we just sit back and we just look at ourselves going, why aren't the commissioners acting responsibly for the community? Why in the world are we just sitting there with our heads up our asses going, well, maybe we'll hear from the public today, maybe we won't. But you guys are not proactive. You guys are not proactive, you're reactive, and you need to get understand that some of these issues they're all about taxpayers' money. And I'm befuddled as to why nobody's bringing up these issues about Lurie and about the trip to Japan years ago. You know, so you guys got to get on things. I don't know if I don't give a fuck about anything, but this is the attitude that we're getting from you guys, and it's not healthy. We need a new ethics commissioner. We need a whole new ethics commission. And Ford, I don't know what the hell you're doing, man. You're supposed to oversee this stuff? What the hell are you doing? Besides looking shiny and bright. All right, later.
Thank you for your comments. Vice Chair Salahi, we're checking the queue to see if there's any more callers. And there are no more callers in the queue.
Thank you. Hearing no callers, public comment on agenda item 9 is now closed. I now call agenda item 10, additional opportunity for general public comment. Is there anyone in the room who wishes to make public comment?
I always believe that the vast majority of people are honest, have integrity, and just want to live their lives and let other people live their lives well. There are also people who, the very few, who all the laws in the world just about have been written to protect the rest of us from that few. So I'm very concerned about your willingness to go along with these things without thinking about the long-term implications. So one of the things that, let me tell you, is bad optics, is this is the second meeting for the Ethics Commission that I have gotten Thursday night notification that somebody needs to be here or be on the phone at 10 o'clock the next morning. I have a life, and so do a lot of other people. It minimizes the amount of public people you have attending or calling in, but it is not openness. It is not transparency, and it's bad optics for an ethics commission to look like they're trying to pass some things under the radar. And that's what it looks like. I'm not saying that's what you mean it to be, but that's what it looks like. And I'll second what the caller also said. There's no way to contact you. There's no email address. There's no way to get a hold of you. No phone numbers, nothing. Again, you represent us in San Francisco. You are our body that's supposed to be looking out for the ethical maintenance of our government. And so we need to be able to reach you. So those two things, I really hope you'll take them to heart. And really anything that opens the door to what has been identified as outright bribery again, people will find a way to use it. I was once the secretary or the treasurer of a nonprofit, and we redid our bylaws. And I was the lone voice demanding that we maintained the need to have 3 signatures of the board, mine and 2 other people, for any check over a small amount. And why? Because all people who are dishonest have their radar up for every opportunity, every loophole, and they know how to exploit it. And so when we write bylaws and laws, we need to do that knowing we're protecting against those people who think differently from the rest of us. And so please take that in mind when you think about this. Your mission is to practice and promote the highest standards of integrity and government by delivering impactful programs that promote fair, transparent, and accountable government decision-making. That includes the way you do your decisions, and that includes the way you make decisions about what's okay for other bodies. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Are there any callers in the queue?
Checking the queue to see if there's any callers. One moment. And there's one hand raised. Give us 1 sec so we can connect.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, welcome. Your 3 minutes starts now.
Thank you. This is Stephen Hill. I commented on item 8. I just wanted to reiterate a point because I was a little surprised. I think it was Commissioner Ye. Am I saying your name correctly? I hope I am. You said that there's a broader question here about behested payments, but there's not a problem with this specific proposal. No, there is a problem with this specific proposal because you are going to unleash a dynamic on the Board of Supervisors. I'll scratch your back if you scratch my back. That's what's going to happen with this proposal. You know, if I'm a supervisor and I'm trying to get my behested payment put in, then, you know, I have to get the support of my colleagues, of 6 of them on the Board of Supervisors. Keep in mind, the Board of Supervisors needs 8 out of 11 votes to pass this measure, but it's only, according to this measure, it only needs a majority to approve a behested payment. So I need to get 6 votes on the Board of Supervisors, including my own. And so I start, you know, horse trading with them about certain things. It might not just be my behested payment for your behested payment. It might be, I'll vote for your policy if you give me my behested payment. That's the type of dynamic you're unleashing. On the Board of Supervisors, I'm sure you're aware, there are factions always, and that's just natural, right? So there's some, they say the progressives versus the moderates, the west side versus the east side. So within those factions, they are going to start looking at things differently over these behested payments. And again, they only need a majority, whereas you need 2/3 in order to pass this. I mean, I think there's a way to address some of the concerns that have been expressed by President Mandelman and others. There's a way to create procedures where you could grant exemptions, but this proposal is not it. The idea that the Board of Supervisors with a majority vote could simply approve a behested payment that Prop E specifically said you may not do is a really bad look for you as an ethics commission. You're undermining the process of the faith of the public in which they pass something with 70% of the vote. And the idea that has anyone protested the previous waivers? The public doesn't have time to pay attention to every little thing that the Board of Supervisors is doing. People are busy with their lives as the price of living is going up and everyone else is trying to cope with that. You are the ethics commissioners. You are the representatives of the people to make sure that the procedures in place don't create these types of loopholes and these type of incentives for corrupt behavior that Prop E was passed overwhelmingly to address. And I share some of the concerns of others who have given comment that you as a commission here are falling down. You are not acting like you are looking at ethics. You are acting like you are concerned about...
Thank you for your comments. Your time has expired.
I'm supposed to get a 30-second warning. I did not get a 30-second warning.
A 30-second warning did go off. Thank you for your comments. Vice Chair Salahi, we're checking to see the queue if there's any callers. Caller, can you hear us?
Yes, you're hearing me?
Yes, welcome. Your 3 minutes starts now.
All right, thank you again. Trent Lang, Executive Director of the California Clean Money Campaign again. I appreciate your holding the item 8 until a further discussion with the full commissioners. Did want to make a couple of quick comments on that. Echoing with what Stephen Hill said, our concern is explicitly about behested payments from interested parties, city contractors, et cetera. It is, I mean, there are in general concerns about behested payments, but this is explicitly about behested payments from interested parties. That's what Proposition E was about. There is a special danger for pay to play when an elected official is asking a contractor whose fate they determine for donations. They can ask anybody else, and they'll say, "That's nice, thank you, Mr. Supervisor or Mrs. Supervisor, for your request. I'll take it into account." But the fate of their decision of their contracts isn't in hand. That's why there's a special difficulty. It's even of kind of a form of you know, it's almost a threat to the contractor. It could be viewed as a threat to the contractor. Either make this donation or else you might. It's kind of implied. I'm sure supervisors don't say this, but contractors may think that they need to make this donation request to get their contract fairly viewed. And last, so please consider that when you bring that up. This is explicitly about interested party donations from supervisors. That was explicitly voted on by the voters in Proposition E, not the other kinds. And lastly, I'd like to echo the request that you really please do make your city email addresses publicly available so that the public can contact you. Other commissions do this. The Elections Commission has the city addresses of the commissioners on their website. We have been able to provide them information ahead of time and have discussions that have been very helpful. We wish that you would do the same for yourselves. Please consider changing that policy. Thank you, and again, thank you for your thoughtful consideration you have led on this issue in the past.
Thank you for your comments. Vice Chair Salahi, we're checking to see if there's any more callers. And there are no more callers in the queue.
Thank you. Hearing no further callers, this additional opportunity for public comment under item 10 is now closed. I just wanted to briefly address one of the concerns about the agenda. For the record, although the person who made the comment is no longer here, we do publish those at least 72 hours before each meeting. So those are usually up by Tuesday of that week.
Right.
I now call agenda item 11, adjournment. Thank you. This concludes the November 14th, 2025 meeting of the San Francisco Ethics Committee.